Our world just changed the day my dad suddenly died.
So you've built this amazing safe space for community. But before we get into talking about that, I want to go back in time and actually talk about a day in your life before you had the shift into building the cafe. Can you take me through what that was like, what an average work day was for you?
I mean, it was hectic in its own way, just like it's hectic now. But I had a 9-to-5 job, and I did work plenty of hours outside of those 9-to-5, as most people do anymore. But I would get up, get the kids ready, get them to school, run to work, get everything ready at work to see clients. And I worked in finance. And so then I would just work through my lunches and try and get ahead. And, sometimes if I took a lunch, I'd run to the grocery store, run it back home, and then come back and just keep working, and then go get the kids and run with sports. And, it was just a constant circle of chaos.
Go,
yes.
go. Yeah, so I was busy. And I've known you only a short amount of time, but I bet you were a high performer at work.
Yes, very high. I always exceeded all of my goals, and our performance was based on our raises were based on our performance. And so I always exceeded them, won best of the best. I liked my job. I didn't hate my job. I did enjoy it, and I enjoyed the people I met. I liked the people I worked with, and it was pretty routine. I knew what to expect most days. And different variations in regards to, can I make this work? Can I make these numbers fit? But ultimately, it was pretty much the same thing every day, the just chaos and running in a circle.
And how did you get into finance?
I was a student in high school, and I did the co-op program, and I worked at a bank. And I thought, oh, this is fun, and I enjoyed numbers and money and business ultimately. And so I did that. But then, when I was young, I also recognized that tips were really good, and I liked working in the food business, and I liked meeting people, and I liked the busyness of working in restaurants and the hospitality industry. And so I helped my in-laws build their business. And then, I had kids and left. Well, when you have children and then they start school, you want to be home in the evening and on the weekends. And the hospitality industry doesn't really work around, the 9-to-5, Monday to Friday. So I left the hospitality, went to work in finance again, just basically because it worked around my kids. My husband worked in and out of the country, and was around, but not all the time. And so it was almost like I was a single parent by times. And that Monday to Friday, once kids started school, made it more logical to work in that job. I will also say that my plan was to take over my husband's family's business.
What business was that?
They owned a restaurant in Napanee. And so my plan, I'd worked for them. My plan was to eventually just take over that business. And so my thought was, I should take the job in finance, because not only did it work with my family, but it also would allow me to learn those extra things and, have a stable income that I could qualify to buy a business, when they plan to retire in 5 years.
So was finance then always an intentional step in your path, or?
No. I've been going to school my entire life, and I've taken everything from, psychology to business to human resources to culinary to whatever. I like learning. That's the big thing about me. And I was really good at finance. Even as a young person, I I always was able to save money, and I liked, I had friends that were not good at it and spent their money as a youth. And so I was always felt like I was coaching them on, how to make more money or how to save money or whatever. I could see things differently than some, where I could see, this makes sense logically to make you money. And it was about making money probably more than, the happiness part back then. But it just was clear to me, even at a young age, how if you did this, you would make more than if you did this.
Right.
And, my dad was a teacher, but we owned several businesses growing up as well. So I certainly was, I understood how things could succeed and how things could fail.
Did you get involved in those businesses at a young age?
So my father died when I was 11. So, and so not really, but again, I always enjoyed, we owned a Dairy Queen back in the day when I was a kid. It was the best thing ever. My, dad would bring Sundays to the school for just no reason. And, it was just really fun. And I thought that is the coolest thing as a little kid, to just have your parents show up because they could, because they owned a business, and it was just, and with ice cream, who doesn't like that? And so, I wasn't really involved, but I would play owning a store from probably the time I was 6 or 7. I think that was always an interest. And I kind of pushed it down, I think, for a lot of years. My mom was safe. She was a nurse and loved nursing from the time she went into it to the time she died. She was a very proud nurse, and she liked the stability of being a nurse. And my dad was a dreamer and, an educator, and loved taking risk. And my mom, that was not something she enjoyed. So although, my dad died when I was a child, I had both of these influences. But later in years, when I was making the decision of what to do with the rest of my life, my mom's influence of, I really don't want you to buy your in-laws' business. I don't really want you to go into that. You just have to keep going to school and do something safe and steady. And I listened to that, but it never really felt like it fit.
It must have been tough having differing opinions from what you felt like your dream was at the time.
I think there was some frustration for sure. Hindsight, I can look back and say, she just didn't know that she wasn't comfortable outside of her comfort zone. And probably I wasn't potentially either. I like to play it safe still, but I'm willing to take risks. And so I'm cautious, but optimistic, probably.
Cautiously optimistic. That's my favorite approach. There's an interesting observation. Your mother being a nurse helped people on their worst days, and your father owning a Dairy Queen helped people on their best days. And you're right down the middle, helping people on any day. I guess it kind of runs in the family. Yeah.
Well, my dad was a teacher. That was his job. Both of my...
I really was focused on the ice cream.
Well, I know. Clearly I am too. But, I mean, it's one of those things that both of my parents were definitely helpers. I would say my whole family is. I'm the youngest of 7. And, there's a 20-year gap in my family. My older siblings were more like parents in many ways. And I was able to learn from them. And probably a little bit more wiser at a young age to understanding maybe myself a little better at an earlier age than other people find themselves often in their 40s and 50s. I was probably a little bit younger because I'd had their influences and kind of looked up to them and wanted to be like them. They had success. They have wonderful families. They had good careers. They gave back to their communities, which has always been something that's super important to me. I had very good support and very good role models in my life to be able to jump out and, explore the unknown. There's risk when you decide to just open a business, but when you have support, it does make it's always scary, but it makes it a little bit less scary because so many people really just want you to be successful, whatever you do. And I think that was for my mom. She liked the safety and security. Our world just changed the day my dad suddenly died. And so I think we were all trying to keep things safe and secure. And I think that was why I gravitated towards that safe and secure job, because it was steady, it was consistent. I wasn't going to get laid off. I wasn't going to have those unknowns that were kind of out of my comfort zone and not always happy things in my life.
Let's drill into that a little bit, because I see what you've built and I'm really excited to talk about it, but I want to understand the why. So when you're working in finance, you have this life. How many kids do you have?
I have two.
2 kids? Okay, so you have 2 kids. They were little. Husband was traveling for work. What did he do, by the way?
He worked for a corporation, Goodyear Corporation.
Oh, great.
And so he was actually in Oklahoma when I decided to quit my job and open a business. I called him one day and I was like, honey, I quit my job today and I'm opening a business and I'm opening a cafe. And he was like, well, it's about time. And I was like, okay, good. I'm glad you feel that way. I probably should have talked to you beforehand, but it wasn't one particular, I didn't have that moment of, I'm sick of this job and I'm just going to leave. That didn't happen. It had been something I'd been pondering for so long. I'd had many opportunities over the years. I met people that were getting out of their businesses and looking to sell or looking to change. So certainly I'd had opportunities where I could have jumped in, but...
How long were you pondering it?
Oh, if I think about it, probably since I was, 21. And I did this when I was 40. So I think there was always a part of me that was just wanting to have a little cafe. I mean, when I was 5, I set up our house like a little cafe and invited neighbors to come in. I mean, they didn't come, but I probably wasn't very good at marketing at that point. But I just, I loved the whole idea of it. I don't know why a cafe. I have no idea, other than, I enjoyed helping people, serving people, cooking, baking, making people happy.
Can you walk me through what happened that weekend that your husband was in Oklahoma and you thought, today's the day I'm going to quit? After 19 years of thinking about it and wanting to do it, and you said it wasn't anything bad, but what actually happened?
I had an opportunity. So a friend of mine had she had wanted a flower shop. And so we'd always talked about having this flower shop and cafe, and that was a pipe dream, and her kids were the same age as mine. And so anyway, we'd always had this dream, always had this wish, but neither of us were really willing to jump in full speed because, it's the unknown and it's scary, and it's also depending on somebody else if you share a space. And so my friend, we talked about doing this together, and she had been working with a photographer, and she said, there's a building downtown that, I'm looking at. And I said, well, I saw that building was like for rent as well, or for sale. Oh my gosh, we should do this. And she was like, absolutely. So we actually went into the building that I'm in now. And there was a photographer and a wedding planner and a florist and myself. So we shared this ginormous space, and I had the cafe part, and then my son Ben was doing cakes outside of school as in that space as well. So it was one of those things that, it was less expensive to share the space. And so that was how I thought, well, it's never going to be less expensive for me to do this. The photographer and the wedding planner already had customers, so there'd be people coming in our door. So that logical piece of me saw, this might be the best time. And at the end of the day, work just wasn't fulfilling me. I felt like I was going through the motions of life and kids and just the day-to-day grind. And I wasn't growing as a person. I was getting, I don't know, I think I was getting annoyed at the stupid little things that, you'd see people that worked in my job for a long time and they couldn't relate to the customers. They just were angry all the time. And sometimes you just outstay the time that you should in a workplace. And I thought, I don't want to be that.
Did you recognize in the moment then something was missing, or was it just a feeling?
It was a feeling that this can't be my life. Like, I think I need more. I was raised to think that I could conquer the world. And I wasn't conquering the world. I was just playing it safe and almost felt like I was drowning. Like, I thought, if I keep going, I'm never going to leave. And it's going to be harder and harder. I'm getting older and older, and I'm just never going to be able to leave. And the thought of that was quite overwhelming to me, that, I'd had this life and I was supposed to be in the best years of my life, and it wasn't that great. And the part of it that wasn't that great was this part that I spent so much time and energy on every day. And again, it wasn't the job itself. It wasn't the people. It just wasn't me.
It's a tough disconnect to have. And could you name it at the time?
I think so.
Like, I know hindsight, when we're going back in time, is easy to recognize, but in the moment, was there ever a day where you had that exact conversation? Like, what are you doing? You're going to be trapped.
I had that conversation, and I'd had it with many of the people in my job, because I think many of us felt that way. You're living paycheck to paycheck. You're showing up at work. You're, putting on this brave front, and you're guiding people to help them live their dreams. And yours is just, you almost stop dreaming of those things the longer you get into it. I think I just thought, this can't be it, because I can't do this for the rest of my life and remain true to who I wanted to be.
When you're working in a place, even though you're high performing and doing the right things and helping people, and people you're getting the accolades, and you're meeting the job criteria, and at the end of the day you go home and you still aren't feeling aligned internally. I know the feeling, and it shakes you, because you're doing everything right. And everyone around you looking in thinks you're doing everything right. And yet you just don't feel whole. And that disconnect it's troubling, because there's a voice that's telling you, hey, there's more, or don't forget about this. And you have to face that. It can be scary, because now you're looking at quitting the safety of your job, telling your husband when he's in another country, and changing the trajectory of your family for the kids. Opening up a shop that the hours are going to be different, the pay is questionable. You're now spending money to go to work instead of getting paid to go to work. There's so many reasons for you to not do that, but you did it.
So as I was moving tables into this space with my best friend of, forever, I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to do this. She's like, you're doing this. Like, this is not an option. We're moving tables in. But up until that last minute, I thought, I can back out now. I can still go back to my job. But over the years, the florist decided she didn't want to have a florist shop anymore. She wanted to do weddings, went down to work in the basement. I took over more space and more space. Photographer moved downstairs, and my family ended up buying the building. So what I thought was going to be temporary in that space, and then if I was successful, I'd move out on my own to something that was not a gigantic building, and more intimate of what I thought. Suddenly we had a building, and I was going to be there. And so it's grown, and I've had to change and diversify. COVID made huge changes for us. I started with 7 little tables, and we do lots of different things at the cafe. We have concert series, and We work with the local community theater, and we allow nonprofits to utilize the space upstairs, the studio, for free. And so it's grown and changed. It's a cafe. What I thought was going to just start out as a cafe where I'm feeding people has turned into this community and this hub. And it's been such an incredible journey. I've learned a lot about myself. There's that confidence that comes from doing something that you love and turning it into a successful adventure that not only, feeds me, but I've been blessed to have so many great employees come into my life and just see them grow to their full potential. And, their end game isn't always to stay at the cafe forever. It's often to just get them to that next step of their life. And so I've been able to do that piece, which I did in finance, but I've taken it to the cafe. I want to know about what they want, what their dreams are, and how can we get them there while enjoying their work life and having a work and family balance. And often that's at the expense of myself. I'm not going to, I work every weekend, and not all of my employees work every weekend. But I recognize that the people that I've been blessed to have in my life that work with me are very much a part of building the business, as maybe not as much as I am or my family has been, but I couldn't have done it without them. And I've been lucky to have these people that just randomly walk in and become family.
We have to wrap, but I want to recap what I've taken away from your story, if I may.
We've been all over the map here.
We have. So what I hear is somebody who grew up with great influence from a wide and diverse background, both through your parents and your siblings. Got into finance, a corporate career that you were really good at, and cared an awful lot about, but always felt something was missing. Saw an opportunity to go into the business that you dreamed of doing, leaped at it when you had enough of a support system to back you up, created this amazing chemistry around community and food and bringing people together and helping each other. And all of it sparked from your love of helping. You're a helper. If there's anybody, if you were to go back and give yourself, younger self, some advice, while you were at the bank debating whether you should get this building and into business with a florist, if you were to give yourself, that person, some advice, what would it be?
I think so many people worry about money. Money's just numbers. That's all it is. I think that we worry about failing. You know what? We all do it. We all fail at many things in our life. And those are opportunities to learn and to grow. And, you can't be afraid of that failure, because it just holds you in a place that you might not want to be down the road. And really, what if you try and succeed? It's amazing. If you try and fail, then you've learned. And I think I was just so afraid of that, being stuck in that failure and thinking that there was no way out of being a failure, when really people fail every day. I mean, I've failed at many things in my life. But I don't know why leaving something safe to go to something unknown, you equate it with possibly failing, and that's going to be the end of your life. Like it's never the end of your life. There's always something more. And, and usually in that process, you really, really gain some knowledge about yourself that is so worth learning. And I think that's the big key is if you're willing to take that risk and learn something about yourself and about the people in your world, you just do it. And it can be so scary, so overwhelming. You know, there's been a lot of tears, but it's been the best experience of my life. Like, truthfully, it's, you know, when I think back, I think I never envisioned this, but I did envision it. I did want this. This is what I envisioned my life to be, maybe on a more grander scale of, like, you know, chains and everything like that all across the world. But I recognize that I don't need that. I'm good with the world I'm in and what I've got. It's just, it's amazing to get to this time in my life and just be really, really good and thankful that I had the courage and the community around me and my family to support me, because I definitely couldn't have done it without them. No matter what's in here, those things are important to me. And, you know, I probably would have done it anyway, but it wouldn't have been, it's nice to take them along on the journey. And I'm grateful that they've been there and stuck by me and helped me and, you know, helped me grow my strength.
Well, I'm grateful for you sharing the story with us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, well, it's nice to meet you.
And I think we're going to talk about adding that grilled cheese to your menu.
We can talk about it. You could be like, you know, the guy who comes and makes it one day. Like, you could be the celebrity chef for the day.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
I won't leave you high and dry. I'll see if I can replace myself as quickly as possible, but that's not going to happen